Uh, Everything I'm going through, like I said, guys, is in complete detail in the user guide as well, which is available in the app. I'm going to show you real quickly how to bring that up on the tangent. Just tap this I button down here, and you tap the user guide, and it'll go right into that. Hi there. So I realized that I've been doing things kind of backwards in my tutorials in the sense that I've been covering some of the more advanced stuff, and I never really made a basically how to use Verto Studio tutorial. So I figured I'd go back to basics with this first real basic video of the series. So like I said, I'm doing things a little out of order, but now I'm moving on to the basics. You'll notice I'm not recording from my iPad. I'm actually recording from my desktop computer. And the reason why I'm doing that is I'm using the iPad simulator because for this video I want to show where the mouse is so you guys can follow where the pointer is. This simulator isn't as fast as an actual iPad, but that should be okay for this video. If it becomes a problem, I'll switch over to recording from the iPad again. But I wanted you guys to be able to follow the mouse as I go over this stuff. So real quickly, when the app starts up and you create a new scene in Verto Studio, this is essentially what you're going to see. It's the default scene, which consists of a single plane object, a light object, and a grid, which helps you kind of get your bearings when you're dealing with a scene that doesn't have a lot of objects in them. If you've imported an OBJ file or a document from elsewhere that's been shared with you, obviously there'll be more objects in the scene. But starting out, this is kind of what you're starting with. So real quickly, I'm going to go over the user interface and kind of how Verto Studio works, and we'll expand upon that. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get through everything in one video. There's quite a bit. But like I said, this will cover just the initial basics, and hopefully further videos will expand upon this. So the first thing, the most important thing that you will be working with is going to be this toolbar up here, the blue one, which is called the Object Toolbar. And this toolbar contains pretty much everything you need to deal with working with objects as a whole or objects that have been selected. So just from left to right, I'm going to identify all these. This plus button is the add button here. This is what you tap to add new entire primitive objects to the scene. This is your object panel or your object library, which allows you to pick from. This button's your undo. So if you go ahead and make a mistake and you delete something, you can go ahead and hit this to undo. This is your tool selector, which is pretty important. The tool selector contains all the tools that are available to the app to be used. The auto tool is the default. You should also notice that when you're in portrait orientation, there are only 3 tools available. Landscape, you'll have the entire palette. This consists of the auto tool, pan tool, move tool, the rotate tool, the scale tool, and the select tool. And I'm going to go over these once I finish going over the rest of the object toolbar. But the auto tool is the default, and it's important to say that you can do just about everything that's in the rest of the tools using just the auto tool. It's just each one, it gives you more control over those operations. The next button is the camera button. This contains all of your view related stuff. If you want to change your camera view, render the view to an image, change the background color, do more advanced stuff like tweak the render pipeline editor, change from perspective to ortho, change from single view to split screen. That's all there. Then we have the clipboard. This allows you to select things, copy and paste them using the clipboard icon. If it's not there, that just means you don't have anything in your clipboard right now, or you haven't selected anything that's copyable. But if there's something that's pastable, you'll see the clipboard and you'll be able to paste it. A good example of this would be like if you have an image that you've copied from elsewhere, even outside of the app, you can paste that in to the texture library using that. And then, of course, the library button backs you out of the scene and returns you back to the main scene library, which looks like that. I should mention that Verto Studio doesn't have a save button, and there's a very good reason why. Your scene is automatically saved for you roughly once every minute, which is good if anything goes wrong or you back out of the app and you're just not thinking. Your scene's saved the minute that happens. It's also saved the minute you hit the library button. It's very hard to lose your work unless it's really difficult to lose your work in this app. So that's the blue object toolbar. You'll notice the object toolbar is case sensitive or context sensitive. So if you select an object, the toolbar has a slightly different appearance on the right. I'm going to go over those as soon as I go over the tools. So the auto tool. The way the auto tool works in Verto Studio is it's designed for a touch screen. So the best way I can describe this is if you pan with your finger, meaning if you just drag your finger across the screen and you don't have anything selected, you will pan the view, or I should say you will revolve the view. And that depends predominantly on your camera view. But for the free view, which is the default, the free view camera view, panning your finger will actually rotate you around the selection center, which defaults to be the center of the scene. So that's what moving the finger around will do. If you use two fingers and you pan, you'll actually, or you drag with two fingers, you will actually pan around the scene laterally. So that's really panning. So that's the difference between a one and a two finger drag with the auto tool. Now it gets a little bit more interesting if you select something. So if you tap an object, just tap it, you'll select it with the auto tool. And that's true with a lot of the other tools as well, but the auto tool holds that true the most. Once you select an object, notice if you drag your finger anywhere else, you'll still pan the scene. But if you swipe your finger over the object that's been selected, just the selected object, you'll move it around. And you'll notice the movement is kind of what you would expect. It just moves where your finger goes. I'm going to go ahead and undo that and put it back in the center. I've moved it quite a few times, haven't I? So that works with the light as well. If I tap the light once to select it, there's a select none button here for convenience, but I tap it to select it, and then I pan the finger over it, and I've moved the light around. This is very important because this fundamental concept, you're going to be in the auto tool a lot in Verto Studio unless you want to be constantly changing these things up here. It's just kind of where you're always going to default to going back to the auto tool, and that's how you get around. So that's basically the auto tool. Now if you have an object and you want to do some more advanced stuff, you might want to, I'm going to add a cube to the scene here. You might want to grab your selection and do something like rotate it. So if you take your selection and you take two fingers and instead of panning, you twirl them, you will actually rotate the object with your two fingers, which is kind of an intuitive gesture-driven way to rotate the object. Also, if you take two fingers and you reverse pinch or pinch, you will scale the object, which is another useful gesture-driven way to control transforming the object without jumping to another tool. So like I said, the auto tool really allows you to do quite a few things, which is pretty cool. The pan tool is just, it used to be more useful when you couldn't two-finger pan, but basically it's just a one-finger pan. And the interesting thing about the pan tool is you can't select anything, so you can't accidentally deselect something. So if I've selected this cube, and I pan over it, it doesn't move because I'm in the pan tool now. So the pan is just a way, if you have a bunch of objects in your scene, you can't accidentally move something. The pan tool is kind of safe. One thing I didn't mention, if you don't have anything selected and you reverse pinch, you zoom the view. So this is a way to zoom in and out to the center of the viewport. You just pinch and reverse pinch. So a good example is if I'm really far zoomed in and this thing's selected, it's really kind of hard to find a space to pan, so I can just switch to pan, and then I got that covered. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. That's the pan tool. The move tool is different from the auto tool in the sense that once you hit this, you'll notice you got some pretty cool looking, I guess you could say, handlebars to allow you to grab onto the object, do precision translation or precision movement only on one axis at a time. Or you'll notice if you do just like on the auto tool, if you drag over this, it'll move it around. But since you said I want to move, anywhere you drag on the screen will still move the object when you have the move tool selected. It's also true that you can grab onto one of these guys and you can do your precision movements as well. You'll also notice once you switch to the pan and move tool, there's a gearbox that appeared next to the camera. It's another context-sensitive blue object toolbar thing, and what this allows you to do is tap this, and you can do some custom precision movements. So, for example, if I want to move this 10 units to in the y-axis, I can do that, and it's moved up, which is pretty useful. I also can restrict movement, so that this was before I added these toolbars. This was a useful feature to have, so I can move anywhere and it's locked the movement to be on the axes that I've turned on. So for example, suppose I don't want the thing moving up, you can say X and Z only, and then now I've restricted my movement to the XZ plane, and it stays on the ground, if you will. And I'm just going to go ahead and reset those. That's move. Rotate is very similar. You have a rotation that if you do just with your finger will always be around the screen, facing the screen, which is neat. Or you can grab one of these and do a per axis rotation, which is pretty self-explanatory. You also can hit the rotate tool and do a precision adjustment. So for example, if I wanted to take this plane and I wanted to rotate this plane 90 degrees about the x-axis, I've done that, which is a way to do a precision 90-degree angle rotation. So that's the rotate tool. Scale tool, at this point, pretty obvious what's going on here. You can use just a finger to do a uniform scale, or you can grab one of these to do a non-uniform scale, which is the same idea of the other tools as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and undo that and put that back. The last tool is the select tool. The select tool allows you to tap the select as usual, but it has an added benefit in the sense that you can do kind of like a lasso or a rectangle selection to select more than one object at once, which is interesting. It also gives you these special power user buttons down here, which allow you to control the selection mode so that you can actually change from the default mode of replace to additive selection, which means everything you click on, where's that light at? Everything you click on will be added to your selection, which is a nice way to grab a bunch of selection or objects at once. You can also deselect by switching the deselect mode. You just tap things to selectively deselect them. So that's the selection tool. If you go to the gearbox option over here, you'll notice there's quite a bit of nice stuff. You've got select all, select none. You can invert the selection. You can turn on deselect, which is kind of another long cut, or not shortcut if you will, for deselection. And you can also access the entire object list, which allows you to find objects by their name and just tap right there to select them. So for example, if this light was so far off scene that you couldn't find it, you could just bring up the object list from selection and go grab it like that, and then grab the move tool and then just move it into view, even though you couldn't even find it, which is, you'll find is pretty useful when you're dealing with large scenes or scenes where you have objects that aren't selectable and so forth. Wow, this is a mouthful. I'm definitely not going to get through all this in one video, so I'm just going to do the best I can to get through the rest of the blue object toolbar today. Next thing we have is the camera. So like I said, I was going to go over this. This is important because even though we start out in free view by default, which is kind of like a revolving view, if you switch one of these to something like top view, now you're always in a top looking down perspective. So things change quite a bit. For example, there's no revolving. You're pretty much panning no matter how you use the auto tool. As a matter of fact, I don't think this pans the same way in this. And your objects move kind of in plane. So this is a way of getting some, I guess you can say, precision work done if you want to work in a dead-on view. And you can look from all 6 sides of the viewport, front, back, left, right, top, bottom, which is pretty useful. There's a special one called fly-through, and this is hard to do without being on the actual iPad, but essentially this allows you to use first-person style controls to move around your scene as if you were playing kind of like a video game, and that's useful to preview your scene without a bunch of junk on it, which is quite useful. You'll also notice that there's an option to center view to selection. This is very useful, and it applies to free view so that I can center the view to any object I have selected. And if I select that light and I zoom all the way in, you'll notice that now the center of all focus is that light, and I am essentially revolving around that light. If I want to switch it to the cube, maybe I want to work on the cube, center view to selection. I have zoomed in way far here. Zoom out, and now I'm revolving around the cube. So this is a way to get up and close and personal with an object that you might have interest in that you're working heavily on. This really helps in edit mode, like if you're working on a couple vertices or a few triangles, and you want to get up close and personal, you just select those, center view to selection, get up and close with them. When you're ready to reset, you select nothing, just make sure nothing's selected, just hit select none, and you say center view. That'll center you right back to the center of the scene. So that's a way to kind of get your bearings back. You'll also notice that when you two-finger pan, you've altered the center of the scene as well. You just get back, center view, which is pretty cool. So once you've made your beautiful scene and you really like it, you can render it to an image. There's multiple ways to do that. You can copy it to the clipboard, maybe paste it into a message to one of your friends to show them the cool thing you made. Save it directly to the photo album, or you can copy it with a transparent background. So maybe you want to paste it into a Photoshop-like app and composite it with something else you're doing. That's pretty neat. So that's how you can do renderers. Background color is pretty self-explanatory. You just drag these sliders around and you can change the default background color to whatever you want. And then if you can set it, you can set the default. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Render pipeline editor is an advanced feature I'm going to cover in an advanced video. I've already shown you guys you could switch between orthographic, which is kind of like an engineering perspective, for the 3D view, and then you can do a split view, and this is a best of all worlds way to work in dead-on views, but also have your free view down here. And these can be changed. So if I tap this single tap to pick which viewport you're working on, if I tap this, I can switch it to another view. I can have two free views if I want. So that's a way to get some real power user stuff done. So I'm going to switch back to the default. Put that cube back here. So that's the camera button. Moving right along, if you have an object selected, this is going to be another one of your more favorite buttons. This is the Material or Object Properties button. There's a bunch of stuff in here. I'm going to go ahead and go into the most important part, which is, well, first I'm going to go into the material groups. This allows you to pick how your object is shaded. There's quite a few options in here. Just tap one of the material groups, which typically by default, every new object you create has one material group, and you can change how the light model is, how your model is lit by the scene, which allows you to affect the diffuse color, which is kind of the base color of your object with these sliders, or you can key them in. You can pick the highlight color, which defines how shiny your object might be. And the way shininess works is if you're looking at it with a grazing angle with respect to the light, the object will appear shiny with respect to that grazing angle, which is nice. Emission is a way to have your object emit light on its own, so that it will basically add light even if it's not being struck directly by one of the lights in the scene. And then ambient lighting is basically the color of the light, the color of the surface when the light is not striking it. So when the light's facing away, you can raise the ambient lighting of the object such that it might have kind of a red tint or a green tint or some kind of glow that you'd like it to have. Quickly realizing it's tough to go through all this in one video. Opacity allows you to lower the opacity of an object to make it semi-transparent. Shininess I covered. Texture allows you to define the texture mapping for an object. So for example, if I wanted to assign a texture map to this, I'm going to probably have to do a video on texture mapping in its entirety. But basically you tap to select the texture. So it allows you to define your textures. You can also pick your own from the camera on your device or from the library. Or you can import new pictures from your iPad that you've taken and use those directly as textures, which is neat. You'll notice that the color of the surface affects the color of the texture in the sense that it tints it, which is a common practice with three-dimensional shading. So that's the material properties. I'm going to cover the shader button a little later. As you guys have seen, I've actually kind of dove into it in episode 1 in some detail. Backing all the way out, you can toggle the visibility of any surface if you want to quickly hide something that might be expensive to render until you're ready. You can alter the drawing mode from points to triangles. So if you want to make something that just consists of a bunch of points, you can do that. That's essentially the object properties. Almost done here. So moving on the toolbar, we have the clipboard, which I talked about. I have a quick duplicate button, which is a way for you when you're working with objects and you want to quickly replicate them. You can select them, duplicate, and then move your copy out. And that's a way to quickly duplicate and work with making multiple objects out of one at a time, which is quite useful. And I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Then we have mirror, and the best way I can describe mirror, I need to add an object that might not be symmetric. I'm going to go ahead and add a piece of text here. Here's a piece of text. Mirror will actually mirror the object around one of the axes that you choose. So if I pick mirror around X, you'll see that it's actually mirrored the object around the X-axis. And that's what mirror does. I'm going to undo that. And that's the last one, with the exception of edit, which goes into edit mode. I'm going to explain that in a upcoming video, how edit mode works. And then the trash can deletes an object. So when you're done with something you want to get rid of it, you can delete it. So I guess I am going to get rid of text for good. That is essentially the object toolbar. I've covered just about everything on it for this video. I'd like to go in detail about these objects, but I want to keep these videos short, so I think I'll cover the default object primitives in an upcoming video. And I don't want to give you guys too much to digest at once, so I think I'm going to go ahead and end here. Thanks for watching, and we will continue in the next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.